So, welcome back to Matter of Facts Podcast. This is the least professional podcast in all of podcasting. I completely bonered up setting up this show and did not apparently set it up for Rumble properly because it failed as soon as I hit the button. So, if you usually watch this on Rumble, that's totally on me, my bad. And
Oops.
if you normally watch this on YouTube or Facebook, you just really wish I'd shut up and get to the topic. And if you listen to this on audio, all this stream and video crap you don't care about anyway. So, there's all that. But in my defense, I was literally telling Nick right before we went live about the absolutely freaking insane week I've had at work. It's been a corker.
Yeah. Turns out government shutdown messed up your schedule. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, government shutdown has had second and third order effects that are causing things that I normally would be doing 2 weeks ago that are predicated on somebody else doing something, and I'm pretty sure that office is mostly furloughed. So the thing that should have got done 2 weeks ago so I can do my job didn't happen until yesterday morning. So ever since then, it's been kind of like, grab your butt and hold on, hurry up, get all this done 2 weeks ago. But on the upside, I am finding ways left, right, and center because, necessity is the mother of invention to get things done that used to take days done in hours. And I already had a reputation for being able to get things done in hours that take days. And now I'm just compacting it down even more and more and more. Like how fast can really all of this get done?
Turns out you don't need half of the government.
I mean, I don't want to say that out loud.
I did, and I will continue to.
I'm just going to say that when you have someone who is both inventive and properly incentivized, they can find ways to get things done very, very, very quickly. Although I will also say in the same breath that I find that my greatest frustration with my day job is usually just beating my head against the wall of like 25-year-old technology that should have been updated while I was still in high school. But here we are, still using it.
Hey, man, if it works, the government is not going to replace it. And if it doesn't work, they'll replace it with something worse.
I will say that as frustrating as it has been trying to learn software and applications and everything that were written and coded when I was not old enough to buy beer.
Not commented, not coded, not documented.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, so the short version is they stopped teaching the language that these applications are coded in colleges and computer science degrees 15 years ago. It's COBOL. Nobody knows it anymore.
It's COBOL.
COBOL.
Dude. Okay. Way to pick a loser.
I am not a developer. It's not my decision. It's not my no. The craziest stuff I do is like writing mainframe reports, which that's been interesting to learn.
Well, at least you got the brain power to fight through it.
Well, I am leaning pretty heavily on my experience, like with Visual Basic and writing macros and writing logical statements in Excel, which some of that skill set transfers over, but it's still
the thought process transfers over. The language might not exactly, and the syntax definitely doesn't. But
the language and syntax absolutely don't.
Yeah, if you understand the way to think through the code, I mean, it gives you a leg up. It's better than starting from nothing.
Well, before we get to topic, you'll get a kick out of this. So, in the name of full disclosure, because I'm learning about I'm learning about a reporting application that like was written when I was still in high school. So it's ancient. It works fairly well from what I can tell, but it's ancient and there's not a great user base on it. And I found documentation at a public college in California's website because apparently their payroll personnel system is based on a very similar mainframe and uses the same application. So that's where I was able to find product documentation.
Nice.
But I started teaching myself how to modify these reports that are already built in there and how to write new ones and, kind of the mother of invention is necessity. we had a need for these things, and these reports were not built. And the people who built all this stuff retired 10, 15 years ago, and
Right.
nobody else around except for a handful of people in the agency that really understand how this stuff works. So like I've taken it upon myself to learn because I want to know how to make the tool work for me. But in the process of building this report yesterday, I was trying to call down an absolutely incredible amount of information because I needed all these different fields in order to use mail merge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is I put all the stuff in there, the report exploded. Like just immediately air it out. I was like, okay, usually when this happens, I've done something dumb. So I went through and checked like
Sure.
everything I put in, all of the print statements and everything, print this field, yada, yada, yada. Figured I misspelled something, dropped a character.
Yeah, the typical errors.
Fat fingered one of the mainframe addresses, which is just a string of numbers and letters. But everything looked good. So then I was like, and then the guy I was working with was like, okay, well, let's just comment everything out but one, and let's run that one field, and we'll just, turn them all on one at a time individually. And we'll
See
figure
which
out
one breaks.
Yeah. Well, when we did that, every single one of them worked.
Too much data for the program to handle?
Don't beat me to the punchline. So, every one of them works. So we're like, okay, what the hell? So we turn on like 2 or 3 of them, it blows up. We turn on 2 of them, and finally, through like process elimination, I figured out 2 of the fields we were trying to call down were address 1 and address 2, and they've got to be like 20 characters long. And literally what was happening was when you put address 1, address 2, social security number, and I forget one other thing in there, you reach the horizontal character limit of the mainframe program.
Wait. It has a horizontal character limit that's reachable?
Yes.
When was this installed?
I think this version went out of date in the mid-90s, early 90s.
Okay, never mind. That explains why there was a horizontal character limit.
Yes. So what I had to do to make this insanity work, and by the way, this is insanity, is I literally rewrote the whole thing to put address 1, address 2 on one line by itself, and I put everything else on another line. And then I made it to where you comment in one set of information, comment the other one out, and then flip them, and you run the report twice, and then you take those 2 reports and bridge it together in Excel using social security number as a unique identifier to say,
sure,
A goes with A because the socials match.
Right.
Merged it all together in Excel, did all the data validation. It was a several hour long process.
This is why my grandfather's always said, you don't put your hardest worker on your most tedious task. You put the laziest guy, because he's going to find a way to do it as easy as humanly possible and as automated as humanly possible.
Yeah, see, my problem is that I am extremely hardworking, but I absolutely detest tedious, repetitive processes. And because
That's why you're perfect for these things.
Because I hate doing tedious, repetitive processes, I will find the least tedious, annoying way to do something, purely for my own sanity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jeff brings up a good point, though. Can you use AI to code in one syntax and have it translated into another?
So here's the thing. There are multiple sectors, specifically in the public sector, and some in the private sector, by the way, that are extremely averse to using AI.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because of the sensitivity of information being handled.
For instance, I cannot use AI or a lot of cloud-based CAD CAM software because occasionally we work on ITAR things.
Yep. And let's just say that there are multiple public agencies that very commonly have at their fingertips tens or hundreds of thousands of employee records.
Don't worry.
Fill with
those
VII.
have all been lost already.
I know. They've all been leaked to the Chinese twice. I know. I understand. I get it.
I'm saying, man, it's all already been leaked. I mean, come on now. I mean,
I know, but
heck,
but in any case,
didn't Blue Cross Blue Shield have a database breach recently that
Uh,
got like a third of all Americans' social security numbers online?
Blue Cross Blue Shield has, Office Personnel Management has, DoD has. If you have ever in your life been enlisted or worked in the public sector, somebody in China has your social security number tattooed on his forehead. It is just
Probably
the way it is.
unfortunate,
But in any case,
but that's digital security. It's awful hard to be right every time.
yeah.
And that's really the standard you have to be held. You're held to.
Yeah, Raggle Fraggle is saying, get ready for the cold front this Sunday. Yep, we have
It's
to do
supposed to be in
admin
the
work. We have to
Mid
do
to upper
admin work.
20s for me.
Okay, 11 minutes of rambling and bullcrapping about work, and we have to do admin work really, really quick. If you're not a patron, you should be. Patrons keep the show going and support my insanity. There's merch available at the Southern Gal. Support a small business and support the podcast. Cypress Survivalist is going camping, and I never remember what day it is, but I can tell you it is a week from tomorrow.
The 14th.
Today, yes, the 14th, we, the before board members, and my daughter are going out to Bogo State Park. I talked to Raggle. He said he might drop in, but I found out about something recently. He might not be able to, so I wouldn't hold him against him if he can't make it. But, if anybody would like to come out and hang out and get to meet us, hang out for the weekend, it's going to be one of those run with your brum, make your own arrangements, sleep wherever you want to sleep. You are on you're on your own recognizance, but if you bring me a gift of booze, cigars, or coffee, you will be welcome to the campsite.
Good. Bribery is encouraged.
It's not bribery. It's called paying your dues.
No,
and it's within bounds. And in honor of the main topic, I did not silence my phone. This is the absolute least professional I've ever done
worse.
This podcast.
It could be worse. We could have already had the show go down because of the intro video again. But if you guys didn't notice the show title, we're talking coffee today.
Yes.
We're gonna let Phil nerd out on coffee.
Yes, but first you're going to talk and tell me everything you know about coffee while I look something up really quick for my kiddo.
What I know about coffee is extremely limited. Typically, it comes pre-ground in either a bag or a can. You put it into the pot with some water and you hit a button and it starts. Now, I'm very familiar with terrible coffee. All my blue-collar brothers out there, fire and EMS, police, you guys know bad coffee. It's usually burnt. It's been sitting in the coffee pot for 4 to 6 hours with the hot plate still turned on. When you pour it in your mug, you get to it about an hour later. So it's a nice tepid to slightly above room temperature coffee.
Oh,
that's work coffee for you. I mean, my coffee at home's better, but it definitely still goes through the machine pre-ground.
You poor unfortunate soul.
I've heard some people throw ingredients into it. The correct way to drink coffee is black.
I will respectfully disagree. So in the name of full disclosure, I drink coffee with milk, with sugar, black. I drink coffee.
Creamer goes bad in the work fridge before people remember to throw it away. So black coffee is the way to go.
Well, I mean, I drink black coffee at work. First of all, to control my sugar intake, and second of all, because I put literally nothing in the work fridge at all. But anyway, okay, let's start with, where does coffee come from? And the answer is not the store.
The answer is a red tin can that you will later use to hold random nails and screws.
They don't use tin cans anymore, Nick. They're all plastic.
Then how does it hold your nails and screws forever?
I mean, I've got like 20 plastic cans of Folgers that are all over my reloading shelves. Works just fine.
Interesting. I would think the bottom would bust out with all the lead.
They haven't. They're
I don't know.
durable.
I've got a tin Folgers can full of random miscast 9mm.
So anyway, coffee comes from a narrow belt that runs around the globe that is between two specific longitudes that I cannot recall which they are. But if you think about where coffee typically comes from, Colombia, Nicaragua, Indonesia, Mexico, if you draw a band, like a belt around the earth where all those countries are, that is the region on earth where all coffee comes from.
Ah, I found it. 25 degrees north and 30 degrees south of the equator.
Now, the reason for that is somewhat interesting if you're a nerd, which I am. So coffee grows primarily, it can grow outside of that region, but not well and not enough to make a decent yield. But it grows very well in that area because you need a couple things for coffee plants to really, really work well. You need, first of all, a fairly specific climate and some kind of altitude. Coffee does not grow well at sea level. Coffee does not grow where it gets cold and you have frost. But what you need to make coffee plants really work is you need a place that has a pretty much a tropical climate, but you need elevation because think about what happens at elevation. When you're up at a high enough elevation and it gets nighttime, it gets very cold. But then as soon as you get back in daylight, it warms right back up, right?
Yeah.
And you need that temperature swing, not a frost, not like a winter, but you need that temperature swing from day to night. And I forget exactly the biochemical reasoning for that, but it's something to do with it makes the coffee plants fruit, but it slows down the maturity to have that temperature drop at night.
Interesting.
So that is why all coffee comes from this very specific region on the globe, all the way around the globe. Like from Colombia to Indonesia, all the way around the globe, that belt is where all coffee comes from. So by definition, if you don't live in that area, coffee is 110% an import, period. It's not like most products where like it's cheaper to harvest it or cheaper to grow it or it's cheaper to process it. And then we import it in the name of convenience and globalism to have it at a lower cost to a higher cost of living place. You cannot grow coffee in our climate without a greenhouse. And even then, there's been attempts to greenhouse grow coffee. Like, I know there was an attempt in the United Kingdom and the yield for the coffee was like 30% lower than it would have been in its native climate. And that was in a greenhouse that was temperature controlled as close as possible to mimic the natural climate. But the best it got was a 70% of the yield. So could it be grown at our climate? Yes, but it's not well.
Yeah, and I guess the question there is it economically viable? Because a lot of those areas are lower income countries, so it would be far more economically viable to just import it.
Yeah, I mean to be able to greenhouse grow it up here, the input is so high for the output, it just makes no sense. Like the experiment where it was done in the United Kingdom was literally just it was basically an attempt. Now, first of all, the person who did it, like he sold the coffee to local UK roasters, and it was kind of upfront said, like, look, we're going to charge more than what you would if you got this from overseas. You could sell it as a specialty or as a curio because like there is no England grown coffee except for this.
Well, there used to be, but they gave up all those pesky colonies.
Yes. Well, none on the island, put it that way.
True.
So, like I said, it's kind of an interesting situation right there where coffee is by definition an import, but where the coffee actually comes from, like you've probably seen whole bean coffee, right?
Yeah. Well, roasted and unroasted because of the disaster ads.
Yeah. So start at...
It's like a berry with like a nut inside of it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's a coffee cherry, technically, but yes, it's a berry. But like let's start at the place most people are familiar with coffee being like ground coffee you put into a machine.
Sure.
To go one step back from that is whole bean. And that literally it looks almost like a little brown peanut.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
To get there, you have to roast it, and you start with a little green peanut, of which there's like 30 or 40 pounds sitting on that shelf back there because I stock this stuff all the time. But and to get there, it usually arrives here in the U.S. in a burlap sack. It's been on a ship. It got bussed in from another country, but in its home country, the coffee cherries are harvested from the trees. The beans are extracted. They are then sometime. Now, here's where you get a couple decision points depending on the way that plantation does things. They have dry processing and wet processing. You can either wash them or you can just leave them out and basically let them dry out on their own. There's different ways to do it. It does impact the flavor some, and each plantation kind of likes to do things their own way.
Is this why having combinations of different sources of beans for different flavors of coffee is important?
Not important. It's a decision. When you get to the point of blending coffee,
sure,
there are two things you could be doing. One is you don't care about the flavor, the little nuances of flavor. Right. You just want coffee. So if you buy like the last 100 bags from this shipment, the last 50 bags from that shipment, you just put it all together in a pile and then you roast it and grind it and make coffee. Mm-hmm. That's one possibility. I mean, not to begrudge Folgers or any mainstream large scale coffee manufacturer, but that's what they do. I mean, there's a Folgers plant like right down here in New Orleans, and it's literally a refinery. I mean, they roast at scale. So
probably tons at a time, I would imagine, or a continuous process.
Yeah. So what they're looking at down there is they don't care. They're not interested in, well, we want 47 of these beans and 26 of these, and we put them together and it makes the perfect flavor. That's not what they're into. They're controlling output via roast, maybe to a degree, like, because they do have some Colombians and hemp coffees and everything. But I would venture to guess that even looking at like the Colombian coffees, they're not like a single origin from a single lot from a single plantation. It's just Colombian. You know what I'm saying?
The interesting thing about that though is I grew up drinking Folgers coffee because the machine shop I started working at 13, they had Folgers coffee. We have Folgers coffee at work now. It tastes exactly how I remember it, which is just mediocre. You know what I mean? It's not anything exceptionally flavorful. It's caffeinated, and that's really what I'm looking for out of a cup of Folgers coffee. And it's relatively brown liquid. I mean, there's definitely a coffee flavor there, but I wouldn't say it has a distinct flavor profile at all. And maybe that's why.
I mean, it's kind of like, what does chicken taste like? It tastes like everything. Kinda. And again, I'm not begrudging Folgers. I've drank this stuff for years. I kind of elevated my taste, but hold on a second. We have comments. Are we going to talk bean brew types? Yes.
I know nothing about this. I put the pre-ground in the coffee maker.
Okay, I'm going to star that because that comment is going to come back up in just a second. Right. And yes, Raggle, the two beans and the adulterant, and that's the specific word I'm using, that you listed, those are the ones. Matter of fact,
chicory not coffee?
No.
Because I got scary guy here says chicory is not coffee.
Nope. So let's go ahead and throw this up here. Let's unpack it. The two primary types of beans are Arabica and Sumatra. It's Arabica and Robusta. Sumatra is actually it's not a type of bean. I think it's an origin, if I recall correctly.
Sumatra was a country at one point, wasn't it?
And that's what I'm saying. It's an origin in the way that like you have Mexican coffee, which is coffee just from Mexico. But Arabica and Robusta,
Colombian, not Bavarian.
Nicaraguan, Indonesian, so on and so forth. But Arabica and Robusta are your two primary types of coffees. So there for a long time, if I recall correctly, Arabica was, I'm drawing a blank now. One or the other was in very common usage for a very long time because of the flavor profiles, and that's just what the market preferred. The other came into common usage more recently, and that's been more a result of the specialty coffee market. But those are both coffee. Chicory is not coffee. But here's the thing. So here's where chicory comes in. Chicory is actually something that grows native down here in Southeast Louisiana. And you and other people have probably heard of coffee with chicory, right?
I have not.
Okay. If if you and your wife ever come to New Orleans,
Okay.
you will probably like you might have to go to New Orleans, French Quarter, Cafe Du Monde, but you will find coffee with chicory. Chicory is a very, very acquired taste, but chicory is almost more attuned to like a. It's almost more like I want to compare it to like a tea, but it's not like tea leaves.
Are we blaming the French for this, being
No,
that it's really only in that quarter?
this is not actually a French thing. It grows native to
It
Southeast
sounds like a
Louisiana.
French problem, though.
Here's the thing. So chicory was actually not originally used in tandem with coffee or drank standalone. What happened was American Revolution, Battle of New Orleans. The English blockaded the port of New Orleans, right?
As you do, yeah.
Well, one of the first things that they couldn't get into port anymore was coffee. And that is a bit of a problem for we French folks down here. We like our coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So to stretch out the available coffee store, it was very common in this area to adulterate or use an adulterant, basically to mix some chicory with coffee to kind of spread it out a little bit. Think of it like if you have really good stuff from your local non-authorized pharmaceutical dealer and you mix in a little bit of flour or something to like spread it out a little bit. That's what was going on with the coffee and chicory. And then over time, when the coffee
late war bread was sawdust.
Yeah. And then when the coffee completely ran out, people just brewed up chicory. Now it's an acquired taste. I couldn't say, I mean, I've drank it before and it's not my favorite, but I wouldn't turn it down. It does tend to make the coffee very spicy. Not necessarily in a good way. Like you've had like really strong black coffee, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this like is 3 times brewed through 3 different sets of grounds. Yeah.
This is not that though. This is not like, ooh, this is like a really strong cup of coffee. It's like there is something in this coffee that is not coffee.
Like putting cloves in something?
Not the same flavor, but similar. Like if you've ever smoked like a clove cigarette.
Yes.
Okay. So there is no debating that there's cloves in this cigarette.
Oh yeah. You know there's something there. Yeah.
Same thing with chicory and coffee.
Interesting.
It doesn't have like a minty flavor. I don't know how to describe it. It's just chicory, but if you ever taste it, you will never in life ever get that taste out of your head. And I'm going to agree with Dr. Scary Guy. Like Cafe Du Monde is highly overrated. Like it is the ultimate. I just came to New Orleans as a tourist. I am the most basic bitch. I have to have all the basic bitch French Quarter experiences. I'm going to go to Cafe Du Monde and get a beignet and a cup of coffee. I get it. Do it, enjoy it, have fun. But for really good coffee, Cafe Du Monde is just, I've had just as good, if not better. I mean, but down here we're spoiled for choices. I mean, Folgers, even though I don't think it's great coffee, it's freaking close. So it's reasonably fresh, but you've also got like Community Coffee, PJ's Coffee, which is local. So is Community. I mean, we are really spoiled for good coffee brands down here in Louisiana.
That's fair.
But anyway, so yeah, that's my whole rant on what chicory is.
I almost want to try it now just because I know it's different.
Probably your best bet would be to order Cafe Du Monde. I know is going to have it, but Cafe Du Monde coffee with chicory. You could probably order it and have it shipped to you.
Probably. I mean,
you cannot have chicory in the Disaster Coffee store. That's not going to happen.
I wasn't going to request you do that. I was going to insist you keep the coffee on that store, whatever you think is good coffee, because apparently I don't know good coffee.
Oh, look, I've gone down the coffee nerd rabbit hole. I accept it.
Hey, man, you know what? Honestly, coffee for me has always been about a caffeine delivery system that was not just metric ass loads of sugar.
I mean, that's fair.
I mean, I went from coffee to Monsters back to coffee, and I really do think that was trading up, going off the Monsters, because man, oof.
Raggle, I don't know off the top of my head if chicory has caffeine in it.
Don't know. We'll have to find out.
Or no, that wasn't Raggle. Shit, I'm sorry. That's
Oh,
your
that was
wife.
Rachel. It was. That's a good question. She has to limit her
but there's
caffeine.
Rachel right underneath Raggle Fraggle, and their
True.
names are similar enough that at a glance.
Good God, yeah, they are. They're almost the exact same.
So
length,
it's
too.
not just me. Same length, both start with R-A.
They are, but I would imagine she's prettier. So
Well,
haven't met Raggle. You never know.
I have. Your wife's prettier than he is. He won't be
that's
upset
good.
about that either.
I don't think she will be either.
But in any case, so like let's. That's where coffee comes from. It has to be grown overseas. It does come up. It does come into us in the bowels of ships in friggin' 50-pound burlap sacks. It is ostensibly a dried grain at that point. Like as long as it doesn't get moist, and as long as rats don't start chewing on it. I mean, this is like been the reason why Disaster Coffee started off with bunker beans and green coffee beans as a long-term store, because it's no different than storing rice at that point.
Now, I have heard there are some extremely expensive and very ritzy coffees that require them to be chewed on and digested by critters.
I will never, ever
eat the poo coffee.
I will never drink the Kopi Luwak or whatever it's called.
Now, is that because it's insanely expensive, which I have heard it is, or is that because it is poo coffee?
Both.
That's fair.
And both are perfectly valid answers. Both
are perfectly valid answers.
Also, the market for that is actually extraordinarily exploitive of those animals, because like
I bet it is.
So before the movie Bucket List came out and it kind of like came into vogue at that point, it was still expensive then, but it wasn't near as expensive as it was, and it wasn't as much sought after. It's kind of a specialty market. So what has happened,
right? Because how many people are going to be willing to be like, yes, a cat has pooped this coffee, please drink it.
So what has happened is now they literally have farms where they have these animals in cages and they feed them nothing but coffee cherries, which is awful for the animals and awful for their health, by the way. They're incredibly malnourished, and it's not a good thing. I like nothing about it. And the problem is that
don't drink poo coffee. It's bad for the environment and animals.
Yes, and I like animals better than most people, which
also it's made of poo.
It's not made of poo. It's just been partially digested in poo.
Look, so has corn, but we're not making that corn into cornbread either.
That's a different show.
I'm just saying, man, you shouldn't make poo into food or drinks.
True. So anyway, that's where coffee comes from. Let's talk about roasting, even though Raggle specifically said he wanted to know about, what was it? I have to start it, otherwise I'll forget.
He had a good question.
He wanted to talk about brew types. So we'll get to that in just a minute.
So I know you've talked before about your home brewing setups. You've gone through a bit of an evolution in your home brewing setups, haven't you? I mean, I think you started off with like a popcorn maker.
So
like a campfire popcorn maker for your first kit?
No, it wasn't actually that, but let me get through the whole thing. So
sure.
Most people buy your coffee pre-roasted. There's lots of good reasons for that. It's convenient. Most of your roasters have very, very precise equipment. So my whole spiel on roasting coffee is that to roast a single batch of coffee to an excellent end result is art.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the coffee, you're smelling it, your senses are fully engaged in what the coffee is doing. It's like baking and waiting for that perfect moment to pull the pie or whatever it is out of the oven, so it's not over, it's not under, it's just perfect.
Right.
That is not science. That is art. That is art, to have that intuition and know that the product is ready to come out. To be fully engaged in the coffee and to use your intuition to there's a certain amount of measuring temperatures and watching times. Right. But at this point in me roasting coffee, most of my senses are engaged in what the coffee is telling me. It's the most fruity, like overgrown nonsense I can express to anybody, but I'm listening to and smelling and watching the coffee more than I am watching a stopwatch.
Well, I think part of it has got to be the scale you're doing it at, right? Because if you have an inconsistency in, like, say, your 1 pound bag of beans, you're going to notice that more roasting however many ounces at a time you're doing. Whereas if you have 10,000 pounds of beans, those little inconsistencies are going to average out, aren't they?
Not so much that. So here's the thing. Roasting one batch of coffee is art.
Mhm.
Roasting 10,000 batches exactly the same, that is science.
Okay.
That is where professional roasters will have a small scale roaster that only roasts a small amount at a time. And this thing is filled with temperature probes. So they are not just watching the temperature, but they're feeding all this into a computer program that graphs over time what the temperature is, what the rate of agitation or aeration is, depending on whether you're using a fluid bed or a drum type. Like they're graphing all this to build out a profile so that when we want to roast this coffee again, we put this profile into a computer hooked up to a
Mm.
gigantic machine and it reproduces this profile again perfectly.
Oh,
It preheats the roaster to exactly this temperature and then it drops the beans in and then it agitates them at exactly this rate, this many RPM if it's a drum roaster, for example. It's going to raise the temperature at exactly this rate over time to closely match this curve. It's going to do all those things in a very controlled, repeatable fashion. That is the
sure.
science of roasting, is to be able to do it exactly the same time, exactly the same way over and over and over so that your can of Red Folgers tastes like the other 50 cans that are on the shelf.
Right.
I can never match that level of consistency because I'm roasting one batch at a time. What I can do is I can roast a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. I can play with it. I can come up to temperature faster. I can do things like when I get down towards the bottom of one of my propane tanks, I know I need to preheat a little bit more. I need to come up on the temperature more aggressively. I need to open the burner up hotter. I can do all those. I can make all those decisions in real time because I'm looking at this one batch at a time.
Right.
But the place I started out roasting coffee was actually with a very small a wire, like a popcorn popper, but it's not
Okay.
exactly a popcorn popper. So the popcorn poppers you're thinking of are usually about the size of like a pie pan, right?
Yeah, I was thinking more of like the campfire ones you have. They're usually a rectangle, maybe 4 or 5 by 6 to 8,
All
something like
right.
that, inches
So the
square.
so the one I started with is maybe about 5 to 6 inches in diameter.
Okay.
It's it is barely big enough to fill my French press twice.
Hmm.
So it's not a very large coffee maker. Actually, no, I could
So
fill
you're
my French
basically
press one
making,
time with it.
yeah, so you're basically making a pot of coffee there when you're roasting that.
Yes, for all intents and
Hmm.
purposes. Now, for that, that's very simple. Just put your beans in, wave it over a fire. Closer to the fire is hotter, further away is cooler. And you
Right.
have some basic principles you want to apply to roasting. Like you do want to come up to your roasting temperature as quick as is feasible without burning the beans. If you go too fast, you'll wind up with the beans exploding. And then when you look in the final product, you'll find lots and lots of beans that are not like together. They've literally like broken into thirds and fourths because they just popped.
Okay.
Not to mention, usually you'll light them on fire if you try to get too aggressive with it. But that, depending on the bean origin, it can take a lot of temperature really fast to get to that point. If you don't come up on temperature fast enough, they'll never crack or make this popping noise that is kind of intrinsic to roasting
So,
coffee.
so you'll kind of dry them out almost,
You
like almost dehydrate them.
So they're already fairly dry. What you're doing, what that cracking noise is actually it is a it is a little bit of carbon dioxide that's trapped inside the beans.
Hmm.
And when you heat that up enough, it breaches out of the coffee bean. But if you heat the beans up too slowly, it leaches out instead of popping.
So you're not expanding the gas fast enough.
Yeah. And now the
Okay.
problem with that is you can still roast the bean, but if you roast too slowly, often you'll overdevelop the outside of the bean, but the inside of the bean is not roasted properly. So
Okay.
when you go to grind it, you'll have it might all your beans on the outside might look the same, but when you start grinding it, the inside of all those beans is a little bit too green, a little bit too light. And you'll notice that in the taste.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Raggle Fraggle. Small brewer. So a small brewer, and I don't own one because I don't make anything that small, would be like single cup. Think like an AeroPress or something like a V60. Like if you've ever seen the little funnels you put on top of a coffee cup hub and then you pour your water over the top to make one cup at a time. I don't do any of that nonsense because I like my coffee.
That sounds like an extraordinary waste of time.
I mean, yeah, I use French presses and I use French presses and percolators and all kinds of stuff when I'm out camping, and they make 8 to 10 cups at a whack.
Sure.
Because like 4 of those are going in my cup, and usually the other 4 going in Gillian's cup. So if we're not making 8 cups at a time, we're just not making coffee. But that's what I started off using. What I progressed to is what's on that shelf back there behind me above my head, which is a fairly large stainless steel popcorn popping pot. Okay. If you've ever seen the ones where like you'll have a crank handle on the side of it.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
At the bottom.
The old whirly pops.
Okay, so I have a whirly pop behind that one. That is actually I think it's a VK popper, which I actually like a lot better. They work better than the whirly pops in my experience. The whirly pops, the gears tend to bind, and it's
I've been fully intending on replacing my whirly pop for the last 5 years, but it still works, and I just like for the couple times a month we might use it when we're doing a lot of movie nights. It just works, man. I don't know what to say.
It does, but coffee beans are heavier than popcorn kernels.
Sure, that makes sense. They're a larger nut. Well, bean.
So that's the issue I have with whirly pop specifically, is that greater weight tends to make things bind up and bog down a little bit more. The VK popper actually has a almost like a braided bike cable that goes between the handle and the agitator.
Oh, instead of like a spur gear?
Yep. So if you like bind it up too much, you'll break the cable, but it's much smoother. It doesn't bind near as much. It's just I like the system a lot better.
I always thought that if they went back to cast like zinc cast gears instead of plastic gears on the whirly pops, you'd eliminate that binding issue. Because I think a lot of the binding issue is the metal gears.
I've got the metal gears, and that's not the problem.
Interesting.
Honestly, what I think the problem is actually the I want to call it the handle, but it's not a handle, but the top piece the top C-shaped piece of metal that kind of locates all the gears.
Yeah.
That has so much flex to it that
it's just like some 16 or 20 gauge stamping.
Yeah. But I have noticed that about every 4 or 5 times I use it, I've got to like bend that. I got to tweak that to get the gears back in the proper mesh.
I've not had that problem, but perhaps it's because I'm only using it for corn and not coffee.
You're using yours for popcorn. I'm using mine for coffee. And that's another thing, is that if you're going to use a popcorn popper or anything to roast coffee, don't use it for anything else.
Really?
Okay, so as you roast coffee, the coffee oils leach out of the beans, and that stuff cakes the inside of my pot.
So you're saying we could have coffee flavored popcorn?
I don't know if you'd end up with a coffee flavored popcorn or just, I don't know, but I personally wouldn't, because I don't think you're going to end up with coffee flavored popcorn. I think you're going to wind up with death flavored popcorn.
Oh, well, that's disappointing.
I mean, it's like rancid, burnt on oil.
Oh, that is very disappointing.
Yes.
That's not what I was hoping for at all.
If you're now that's how I've roasted coffee. James Walton, one of the other owners of Disaster Coffee, his favorite method is just cast iron skillet and a wooden spoon.
I have heard of guys doing that, or like old in the bottom of the actual coffee pot over a campfire and a wooden spoon.
Yeah. He's also turned me on to, like, I believe it was him. If not, it was him, it was somebody else. Sometimes they'll just put a single layer of coffee beans onto a pan, like a cookie sheet, into the oven at, I think they set it for like, I want to say they set it for like 450, because of course, and the only rotten part of that is you're not getting any bean agitation, so you're going to tend to like not scorch, but you're going to tend to heat up the beans more on one side than the other. But I mean, there are different ways to do this. You could go spend hundreds of dollars on a commercial roaster, and I think you'll get a good product. But I don't know that your product's going to be dramatically better than what you can get with a much more humble roasting method. But at
Well,
the
look,
end of the day, your principles are all
throwing flaming money at a problem is usually the solution.
I mean, somebody once asked me, like, okay, how much does it cost to get into roasting coffee? And I'm like, well, I've got a $60 pot that I'm using on the side burner of a barbecue pit. And I check my pot preheat with a $15 IR thermometer off of Amazon. So, like,
Reasonably affordable.
pretty reasonable. I use the colander out of the kitchen to, like, knock the chaff out, and a coffee sheet or a cookie sheet to lay it all out on to let it cool after it's been roasted. So pretty reasonable. But then again, you can spend $600 on a Genie Cafe. You can spend well over $1,000 on or $1,000 to $2,000 on coffee roasters, and these are still small batch roasters. You want to get into the stuff where you're going to like commercially roast this stuff at scale. You're talking about a $5,000 to $10,000 piece of equipment. I mean,
oh yeah, well it's just like jumping from this little lathe behind me to a production CNC lathe. I mean, you're talking about at least a 10x multiplier in price minimum.
Yeah, but if you want to start roasting at home, like, it's not hideously expensive. I actually have I have an article on mofpodcast.com that kind of details out that whole process and has in it some of the things I've personally used for roasting that I tend to recommend based on my own experience. It's a fun thing to get into.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a coffee dork, you will get the freshest cup of coffee you've ever had because you can literally like roast it, grind it, and drink it within an hour.
Sure, that makes sense.
And if you're one of those tinfoil hat wearing survivalist types, then frankly, if you have coffee just already ground, already roasted, sitting on a shelf, it's going to start to lose flavor within a matter of weeks. I've got 40 pounds sitting on the shelf. I am going to be drinking coffee after the rest of the neighborhood has gone to Mad Max.
So then I suppose this is a good place to toss in shelf life talk here. So obviously ground and ready to brew is the shortest shelf life. What about is that shelf life? Do you know?
So opinions do vary on this because it's taste based and that's subjective to a degree. But
I mean, obviously, even if it no longer has a quality taste to it, it's caffeine.
It's still caffeine, but it's going to start to taste like crap. Although it is worth pointing out that eventually the caffeine content will start to flash off.
Well,
eventually.
Yeah, of course.
7 to 10 days, maybe as much as 14 for like ground roasted coffee. Now, let's stop and think about how long you think that coffee was sitting on the shelf before you got your hands on it.
Well, I usually get a 5-pound bag every 3 months.
Suboptimal, Nick.
I mean, I think it tastes pretty good, but I've not tried any fresher than that. So what would I know?
Okay. Whole bean coffee that has been roasted but not ground yet is more in the realm of like 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Because you remember how we were talking about during the roasting process, there's carbon dioxide trapped inside the bean. So there's still some trapped inside the bean after roasting. It hasn't all been completely pushed out of the bean yet. And because there's carbon dioxide trapped inside the bean, it resists oxygen being able to penetrate into the bean.
Makes sense.
And if you don't have oxygen, sunlight, or moisture, you have nothing that encourages spoilage. So
my wife is diming me out. She says there is a change in how our coffee tastes. I've never noticed. Maybe that's just me, and I am an unsophisticated heathen.
I mean, to be fair, I polluted my taste buds with quite a lot of like Army coffee over the years. So,
yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's pretty good. Fresh bag to nearly empty bag, but
No,
don't know.
no, it's really not 3 months. Jesus
Roundabout.
Christ.
Oh, it's like
I can't talk too much smack because I used to
it's
drink
every 90 days. Yeah.
I used to drink like red cans of Folger, and I always had one on the shelf and one on the counter. So like, I've also been in a position where I drank coffee that was like well past the point it should have been tossed out.
I am fairly
So,
certain
yeah.
that at work we go through one of those big red cans of Folgers about every 2 months because a lot of us have really cut back on how much coffee we drink. And I'm fairly certain the lady that stocks it buys 6 cans at a time from Sam's Club.
So Raggle brings an interesting point up here. There is a kind of this old, I want to call it a wives' tale, that freezing your coffee makes it last longer. It actually does, but not much. So freezing the coffee does slow down the rate at which that it does slow down the rate of oxidation in the same way that freezing anything helps prolong it, but it doesn't help it much. So like, if you're looking to improve the freshness of the coffee, going from already ground whole bean and grinding it on demand or grinding a couple of days out, that's going to improve your situation dramatically.
Okay.
But to get to the point I'm at, where I roast coffee typically every weekend, and then sometimes I'll roast an extra batch in the middle of the week, just depending on consumption. I roast 330 grams at a time. You'll have to forgive me for using the metric system. We do use it for things other than bullets on this podcast, but it's rare. But the problem is that everything...
Bullets, narcotics.
Well, but everything around... Now, in the name of full disclosure, I also drink espresso, and everything around espresso brewing is done in metric.
Sure, that makes sense, because it's small volume.
Yeah. Well, that and the fact that, like, when I'm working to perfect like a roasting recipe, I'm looking at things like the before and after weight, and the difference in that weight can tell you what roast level you're at. Well, there's a lot more granularity of data when you're talking about 330 grams versus 10.1 ounces.
You know what you should use?
You
should use your reloading scale. Do it by grains, 3,000 grains to a pound.
I mean, I could, but I also have
10th grain scale.
I also have a very, very, very precise coffee scale. Very precise. Enough.
I do have to disagree with Raggle here. You can't get every liquor by the gallon. That's horseshit. If you know the right people, you can get every liquor by the gallon. Make friends with your local distillery, and you can get cases at a time.
So that's my spiel on home roasting. If you already know that your optimum time to drink is going to be constrained by whether it's ground or it's, you know, how old that coffee is, then being able to go from a steady state, which is green beans, and roasting it on demand and then grinding it, that's going to give you a fresher cup no matter what. And it's not a huge time investment. I mean, I want to say, like, my personal time spent roasting coffee might be 20 minutes a week.
Okay.
Takes
That's
about
actually a pretty minimal investment. I would have thought it would have been longer than that.
It takes about 10 minutes a batch. 15 if you include the time it takes for the beans to like come down from temperature until I can handle them with my bare hands.
That makes sense. Well, yeah, because there's always... So if you said a half hour a week, that's a safe bet.
Yeah. I mean, even if you call it an hour a week, it's...
Okay.
I waste more time doing things that are less fun than that, to be perfectly honest.
We probably all do.
So let's talk brew methods. You're familiar with the age-old drip machine, and I use it too. It works.
It makes the brown water.
I especially like the fact that it has an automated timer on it, so I can have coffee waiting for me when I wake up in the morning.
To quote my brother, it's the magic brown bean water. Yeah.
So like there's a group of people out there that think very little of drip machines. I actually like drip coffee, and some of that might just be like an ode to my childhood because that's what I grew up drinking with, you know, mostly more milk than coffee, but still that's what I started with.
I mean, the first cup of coffee I ever had was burnt black coffee, and that is what I had this afternoon. So
burnt black coffee.
Oh yeah, you know the stuff that's in the work coffee pot that's been there since 6 o'clock in the morning. The last time somebody brewed a pot, it's like 2 in the afternoon. Yeah, might as well top her off, and away we go.
Raggle. I'm going to put him on word rations if he doesn't
Oh,
slow down.
he's doing the good though.
Yes, he is. So there is drip. Pour over is what we were talking about earlier, where you have you have the little fixture that sits on top of your coffee cup. I've never used one because it only makes one cup at a time, and that's dumb to me.
That is dumb.
And Raggle actually did miss one, even on the next chat that he just put in. He missed one. He still missed one. There's one not here.
We got percolator. What are we missing, Phil?
Don't beat me to the punchline, Nick. Don't beat me to the punchline.
Oh.
French press, and percolator are the two that I have in my camping stuff, and I have both because sometimes I have to make a lot of coffee. And
that makes sense.
Actually, over there on the floor, you see the big silver container. Yeah, that was a purchase for Cypress Survivalists. It is an 80 cup coffee maker.
That sounds a great way to get a heart condition.
It takes one 12-ounce bag of coffee to run at full blast.
Wonderful.
Like one bag of disaster coffee, rip the top off, pour it in, fill it up with water, and
so you're telling me you can consume 12 ounces of coffee in a day is where you're at?
12 ounces of...
Yeah, you're going to drink the entire 12-ounce bag.
Oh, no.
Of coffee yourself.
That comes out when we have, not even guests, that is a Cypress Survivalist type of thing where we have 20 people that show up, and we're going to be drinking
3 of them want coffee. I get it, yeah.
No, we actually drank 2/3 of that thing.
Oh, wow. That's actually significant amounts.
Yes, well... Southeast Louisiana, we like our coffee. But yeah, percolator and French press are what I keep in my my camping coffee box over here. Sometimes we run them both, sometimes one or the other.
I do like the percolator for camp coffee.
So the primary difference between the two, so a bit of coffee nerd crap here. There is a relationship between how fine you grind the coffee and your brewing method. So if you think there's a thing in coffee brewing called contact time. That is literally the number of seconds and minutes that the water is in contact with the grounds.
Okay.
Think about your two extremes, cold brew and espresso. Espresso is really, really fast, really short contact time. Like your shot is usually like 35 seconds. You push the water through the bed of coffee.
Okay.
The coffee has to be ground extremely fine to get extraction out because the water passes through it so fast. Follow me?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it'd be like a Portland cement versus a concrete. Yeah.
Now, on the opposite extreme is cold brew, where you literally you put your coffee in the water and you put it in the fridge and it's cold, so it doesn't extract very well, and it sits in there overnight.
So is that how you're supposed to do cold brew?
I mean, yeah, if you do it the old-fashioned way.
Huh. My wife has got a cold brew machine that does... I think it hot brews the coffee and then puts it on ice.
Okay, so that's kind of cold brew, but I'm talking about like the really slow old school way.
Oh, but we could try that.
Huh. But when you do that, you grind the coffee actually fairly coarser even than you do with a drip machine because
it's going to sit there all night.
Because the water's in contact with the coffee for so long. So a percolator and a French press are going to technically have different optimal grind settings because with a French press, you put the coffee in the hot water, you let it sit there for 5 minutes or so, and then you press it through. When a percolator, the coffee is constantly flowing over the coffee bed. Right. It's all a little bit different. Now, there is kind of a Goldilocks setting for your grinder where you could just grind it and it works okay-ish in everything.
Sure.
Except espresso. Espresso's kind of special.
All right.
But the one coffee brewing method Raggle didn't say, because I don't like this coffee brewing method, is Keurig machines.
Is not that very similar to an espresso type grind? Because it's a very short contact time?
Don't ever impugn my fine product of espresso.
Well, I wasn't trying to impugn. I was more asking, because it is a very short contact time, is it not?
It is a very short contact time. The primary difference is espresso is done under pressure, and Keurig is still ostensibly a gravity drip machine.
Okay.
It's just a really, really fast gravity drip machine.
So
And yeah,
finer, but not that fine.
in my experience, it's about 2 steps finer than drip coffee.
Okay.
But on my power grinder, I use setting 12, which these settings mean nothing to anybody else. It's just for comparison's sake.
It's the volume goes up to 11 joke. Yeah.
I use setting 12 for my drip coffee. I use setting 10 for my Keurig cups, and I make my own. I use setting 2 for espresso.
Oh, okay. So it's more of like almost a flour consistency powder.
Maybe you want it between flour and wet sand.
Interesting.
For espresso. We'll get into espresso in just a second. Yeah. Espresso, we could do a whole nother show about just espresso, but none of you know.
I bet you could.
Much. But yeah, I say it's different, Raggle, because from a perspective of how you prepare the coffee, it and how it makes the coffee, it is to me fundamentally different. And I'll be the first to say, like, I make my own K-Cups for work because it's all we have at work is Keurig machines. I don't like Keurig machines. I think they make a lot of compromises in the name of making coffee. The contact time is way too short. There's not pressure like you have with espresso, so you can get proper extraction. I've never had a Keurig make as good of a cup of coffee as I could make with a drip machine, except for the fact that a Keurig will be done in a minute and a drip machine will take substantially longer to make a pot.
Well, I think the whole selling point behind the Keurig is Karen can have her tea, Susie can have her hot chocolate, you can have your cup of coffee, all out of the same machine in a corporate setting. I think that was the point of the machine was user friendly, quick, and variability. So it was never supposed to be a good cup of coffee. It was just supposed to be decent enough at all the things.
Yes, and what happens when something is good enough at everything? It winds up being great at none of them.
Yeah, it's just generally crap. It's good enough for the office.
Yeah. So we're going to end this at espresso. So espresso is this subject that gets even people that are into coffee really wound up, because you do have that camp out there that sees espresso as like something that isn't coffee, but they've never felt the need to try it, or they associate espresso with like these god awful drinks that Starbucks makes that are more sugar and crap than.
I've never understood the liking of Starbucks. Now, Phil, have you had just their coffee without all the extra shit in it?
It tastes like ass.
It does. Now, I'm a man that loves a nice, overly burnt, too hot and or too cold cup of coffee. I will drink them all. But my God, I mean, I will take 4-hour, 6-hour-old on a hot plate, shitty work coffee over Starbucks' freshly made and yet somehow still even more burnt to shit coffee.
So it is where now to back up just a step or two to the whole conversation about roasting. Roasting your coffee really light tends to bring out different flavors than roasting it really dark.
Okay.
Roasting coffee really light tends to bring out the origin flavors of the coffee more than the roasting flavor, if you follow me. If you roast a bunch of different coffees very light from different parts of the world, they will taste notably different.
Oh, okay. I get
if you roast all those coffees dark, they all taste like dark fucking roast.
Yeah, you burn them enough, they all taste like carbon. I get it. Yeah.
This is why Starbucks dark roast, this is why the running joke in the coffee community is that if you see like beans that are just burnt to charcoal, it's like, oh, it's Starbucks light roast. Because Starbucks just dark roast the hell out of everything, because
it's terrible.
They buy really low quality beans from importers and roast the shinola out of them so that it all tastes the same when they're done.
Also, you ever notice that if you walk into a Starbucks, you can't just order a large cup of coffee? You can't just ask them for their biggest cup of just coffee. It's always a fucking fight.
I wouldn't know. I haven't stepped foot in a Starbucks in a very long time.
I got a sister that likes Starbucks, and I've had a couple of friends that liked Starbucks, and every time I ended up in one of those places, it was like pulling teeth to just get a cup with coffee and nothing else.
So I think the thing is that like when Starbucks first really came to market, I think it was It was a departure from. It was the first kind of really fancy coffee that was nationwide.
Mm.
And unfortunately, what has happened is that lots of other
First in, best
businesses,
dressed.
and what's happened is that a lot of other companies, going back to like, we're spoiled for good coffee companies down here in Louisiana, but you can get like, there's a PJ's on most corners, and PJ's also has lots of really sugary bullcrap
Sure.
drinks. But PJ's legitimately makes a pretty decent cup of coffee. Community makes really good coffee. CDM or Cafe Du Monde is, I think, very overplayed, but it's okay. But I'm not a Starbucks person. But anyway, so getting back to the whole thing about espresso. The thing about espresso is the origin of espresso actually dates back to Italy. And the weird part of this is that there was a time period in Italy where like coffee was, and still to a degree is, considered medicinal. And there's studies there's actually, I saw a study recently that said that if you consume at least 1 8-ounce cup of coffee a day, your all-cause mortality rate drops by like 23%.
Yeah, because you're less likely to start a fist fight with your coworkers. I get it.
Well, I showed my wife that, said, I'm going to be immortal.
Diminishing returns, bud. Diminishing returns.
Actually, I think I sent her that, and then I sent her the meme of Connor McLeod with the lightning coursing through.
That's great.
Oh, yes, it was awesome. But anyway, that's what I need to do. I need to make a meme for our Instagram of me drinking a cup of coffee and Queen, Masters of the Universe, playing in the background.
Yes.
That would be perfect.
That's great.
But anyway, so in this time period, coffee was considered medicinal. And as a result, there were taxes in Italy on coffee, but they exempted coffee if you drank it standing up. So if you went into a coffee bar, there'd be tables for you to sit down. But if you were just like coming in to get your medicinal coffee, you would stand at the coffee bar. And if you stood up to drink your coffee, it was tax exempt. So this was the genesis of this question the Italians had of like, hey, how can we make this coffee faster so our customers don't have to like stand here at the coffee bar and wait for it? Because all they're doing is they're coming in to get their cup of coffee, and they're going to drink that real fast. They're going to hit the road to go to work for the day. So initially, espresso was an answer to that question of how do we make coffee faster? We grind it finer because finer gives us more extraction with less time to get the water through the bed of coffee when it's ground that fine, because when it's ground that fine, the spaces between the coffee are really, really small. Water doesn't flow through it very well. We need pressure. The early espresso makers, which weren't even called espresso at that time, I want to say brewed at something like 1.5, maybe 2 bar of pressure, which sounds like a lot, but really not. Modern espresso is brewed anywhere from 6 to 9 bar.
Okay.
So considerably more pressure.
Yeah.
It's also brewed with anywhere from like 80 to 90 Celsius water, which again, hot pressure, you get more extraction faster. But this was the whole genesis of how do we make espresso. So what espresso is in a nutshell, and the reason I will defend to the death that it is coffee, is because it literally is coffee. But because it is ground up so much finer, because it's extracted under such heat and pressure compared to drip coffee, you do get a very different flavor profile. You get more non-solubles, you get more coffee oil. It's not just stronger, it's noticeably different, because there are people who like drip coffee that don't like espresso, and there's just people who will only drink espresso because it is a different flavor, legitimately.
I don't know that I've ever tried espresso.
So if you go to a specialty coffee store, like you got to get away from almost any place that's corporate.
We have a boutique single location coffee shop in our hometown that's pretty good that we go to now and then. They make hell of a Danish.
If they offer espresso, you could try just a regular old straight espresso shot. Mm-hmm. For the average person, that is so strong. It's not that, like, if you don't enjoy strong coffee, you won't enjoy it, but it might overpower your taste buds to the degree that you don't taste anything other than really, really strong coffee. What you can do is you can have an Americano made, which is literally an espresso shot or a double espresso shot, pour it into hot water so that it waters it down to roughly black coffee strength, like drip coffee strength.
Okay.
That way,
We made the mistake one time of ordering an espresso blend to throw in our drip pot. Didn't really work out. I mean, it tasted like crap, I thought, but that was probably because we used it incorrectly.
so I would have to ask that. I'd have to ask the question when you got this espresso blend, because that's a loaded statement in coffee nerdism.
I did not know it was an espresso coffee. It was really finely ground. I do know that.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Was
I do believe it was actually meant to be espresso, and I threw it through my drip machine, and it was caffeinated.
Yeah, your contact, you over extracted the holy hell out of it.
Probably.
So
it was strong and it was black.
So the problem is you will hear things referred to as espresso beans or espresso blend, and that is usually just dark roasted coffee, unless it is specifically ground for espresso. The reason I don't know that I would sign off on the idea of buying already ground coffee for use in espresso is that you remember we were having that whole conversation about the variable between contact time and how fine you grind your coffee, right?
Right.
So if for example you put too finely ground coffee in a drip machine, the drip machine might back up and actually, like, if you notice,
just send a bunch of grounds down to the bottom of the pot. Yeah,
exactly. On the flip side of things, if you try to do that with an espresso machine, like a pressurized machine, you literally won't be able to drive the water through. And I've actually had that experience where I got a little too excited with how fine I was grinding my coffee for my espresso. And I was literally like on the verge of bending the lever on the machine. Could not get the water to go through. The puck was a solid slab of concrete almost.
Well, that would be a problem.
Now, on the other side of things, if you don't grind fine enough, you will not be able to make enough water pressure, because as fast as you pull the lever down, in my case, I have a manual lever machine. As fast as you pull the lever down, the water just goes zoop right through the coffee bed. Contact time goes down to like 5 or 6 seconds. Coffee tastes like water. It's hollow.
Yeah.
Hollow is the coffee nerd term, but it's a very under extracted, weak, sad cup of a coffee or a shot of espresso. So since I have a given amount of pressure I'm looking to make and still be able to flow water through this, so that the time between I start pushing the water through and the water's fully passed through the coffee, I'm aiming personally for about 30 to 35 seconds.
Okay.
That's my equipment. That's my recipe. That's how I know it works. And this is a very like personal, how you figure out how your stuff works. But the way I tweak it so that I don't overpressure and I get that amount of time is by changing the grind setting.
Okay.
So I go finer to slow down, and I go coarser to speed it up until I get into that range where I'm making espresso. Once you're roughly into a range, you can tweak it up and down a little bit. You can do things like play with what's called a pre-infusion, where when I very, very first start pulling down on the lever, I will just like let my arm hang on it. So I'm making about 1 bar of pressure, not enough to push water through the puck, but enough to get water to kind of like start to soak the puck. And I'll hold that for about 10 seconds. And then I will pull down and hold about 9 bar pressure for about 20 to 25 more seconds, 35 finished. And that gives me the shot of espresso I'm looking for.
Gives you your desired result.
Brewing espresso is it is equal parts art and science. It's a lot of art because you're going to be experimenting, you're going to be trying different things, you're going to be fooling around with it, but it's also a lot of science in that way. Like if you have the personality where you enjoy reloading your own ammo because it's very precise, it's taking measurements, it's doing this thing 10 different ways and recording your results until you find the perfect thing, that's espresso.
Making your friend's 1 MOA rifle shoot minute of other bullet.
Yes. But literally to be able to get my espresso recipe to the point it's at now where I can reproduce it every single time because I know what I'm aiming for was a several week like every night
Okay.
brew a shot of espresso or 2 shots of espresso. Try a little sip, pour it down the sink because it was abominable. Like do that over and over and over. I actually had a notebook. I was taking notes
Okay. That makes sense. No, it does.
because
It
it,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah. But here's the kicker. When you get everything dialed in, I can make, I would think, coffee shop acceptable espresso here in the house for the cost of bunker beans, which are like $40 for 5 pound bag right now. And I mean, whatever milk and, all the rest of your stuff cost.
Sure.
More importantly to me, though, is the fact that because I have like all those capabilities here at my fingertips, I can make drip coffee, I can make espresso, I can do all those things. I can have 40 pounds sitting on the shelf at all times. That's
Well,
been my
you can make
descent.
exactly what you want this
Yeah,
way too.
by having the raw ingredients.
That
But
makes sense.
that's been my descent into coffee nerdism because I started out where you're at, which was it's coffee, it's black, it caffeinates me, it's all I care. And then
Yeah, it's
over the course of years, and really it started with Disaster Coffee, even before I was a part owner, when I was a customer. I I tried their coffee. I liked it. I can immediately tell the difference between small roast specialty batch coffee that even I'll admit I couldn't afford to drink every day. That was like I called it weekend coffee. During the
yeah,
week, I'd brew the Folgers in the red can because it was cheap and it got the job done.
yeah, exactly.
But then on the weekend, when I had time to like sit around in my pajamas with my wife, hang out for a little bit, have a cup of
Enjoy it.
coffee on the back porch, that's when I'd bust out the Disaster Coffee. And now I'm at the point where because I'm roasting my own and grinding it and doing all the work myself, I can almost match that end result. I can match that end result in terms of freshness. But I
Sure.
will happily admit that Disaster Coffee's coffee is definitely like their roaster has got a little bit of a finer touch than I do. He's just flat out better. They're flat out better at it than I am.
They have the technology to do better.
The technology and the expertise. I'll be the first to admit, I roast coffee every week. I can't hold a candle to the people that are running the roasters behind this brand. I
That
can't.
makes sense. It's their job to get it right.
Yeah.
So
But I will say that I'll punt that red can of Folgers down a hill in front of you and you won't even be mad at me.
probably not. I mean, I'd have to try it to know the difference, I guess. Regular has a couple good questions for us here. So one of them, I think you might be able to answer better, Phil. It says, so Disaster Coffee 6-bean espresso. If I buy the whole beans and grind them for my French press, is it a waste of time?
So I don't exactly know what he means by waste time because if you get coffee, it's at least a good life decision. But
Sure.
I let me unpack that in a couple different ways. So first of all, the 6-bean espresso, I don't recall what the name of that roast is you're referring to. I want to say maybe he's referring to Pandemic, but I could be thrown off. But buying the coffee, is it for espresso specifically? So, okay, good question. No. Again, like I was saying, a lot of people will market, including us, will market a darker roast coffee and as an espresso blend. And that's because a lot of people who brew espresso prefer dark roasted coffee. I don't. I like a medium dark for my espresso. I've used really dark roast and I just don't care for the flavor, but that's a personal thing. So if you see espresso blend and it's not specifically ground for espresso, you're really looking more at just a darker roast coffee. And if you like dark coffee, go for it. It's not going to hurt you. Whole bean is always going to be more fresh than buying it already ground. You will need to spend some time experimenting with your grinder to find the right grind setting for your brew method. Best I can tell you
Okay.
is that if you grind it and you brew it and it tastes it tastes too weak, too hollow, then it's not ground fine enough. And if what you end up with is like super, super bitter and sour and just the over extracted, go more coarse. And you can kind of get a decent range. There's actually a resource on the internet that will tell you if you're using this brew method, you want to brew to approximately this coarseness or refinedness.
All right. That's good.
And
The other half of Raggle's question is why the upsurge in coffee companies over the last 10 years? I think I can tell you why. Social media.
So social media is one thing. A lot of these companies,
Easy marketing.
In the name of full disclosure, Disaster Coffee, we are I mean, Dropshipper has an ugly ring to it. We market the coffee, and a subcontractor handles fulfillment based on our specs, our decisions. Like, I'll be the first to admit, all the coffees I've personally had a hand in bringing into market, it's because we taste tested them and said, this is what we want this coffee to taste like. So
Sure.
we're definitely doing the work, but I don't have a $10,000 roaster here in my house, nor do I have a shipping department. So there's a company behind Disaster Coffee that handles the production of the fulfillment.
You have a child. Child labor is within your reach.
Yeah, 13, they become slightly uncooperative, though. But I think there's been a lot of coffee companies that have taken off as a result of that, just the ease of kind of starting a coffee company where a third party handles
the technology's
production.
made it a lot simpler, for sure.
I also think it's a lot because just the market has expanded. Like 20 years ago, no one was talking about specialty coffee, and now it's just become more and more mainstream. There's a greater appreciation for it, bigger market, more customers. And I think that's a reason why there's been so many more coffee companies like start up and come out of the woodworks, personally.
You know, I think that, yeah, the availability of the customer base, definitely. But if you can't market it, you can't maintain a business. So it wouldn't have mattered if the demand was there. If you couldn't outreach the customers as easily as you can now, which is what you get with social media, the company's not going to succeed.
Yeah. So that's my whole spiel on coffee. If you don't drink coffee, I'm not mad at you, but I'm a little concerned.
I'm shocked that you're able to function on a daily basis without
I
some
mean,
supplemental caffeine.
I'm shocked that I'm able to function with caffeine. So, there's that.
Caffeine in spite makes the world go round.
Yeah. But like I said, I would encourage anybody who's looking for more information. MOFpodcast.com has, I think off the top of my head, 2 different articles I wrote on coffee stuff. One was talking more about like roasting and not specifics roasting, but more like the theory behind it. And the other one was talking more about like my personal setup, the products that I'm using to make coffee here at my house, and kind of details like that evolution of my espresso setup, because I actually use a Flare Neo. For anybody that's around espresso, or really anybody that pays attention to stuff on social media, you may have seen Flare, FLAIR, is a coffee company. They make full manual espresso presses, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a lever that you use to drive a piston through a chamber, and there's water in the chamber, and there's a puck of coffee at the bottom. Deceivingly simple. But I started with
that would lower your barrier to entry in both cost and maintenance, though. The simpler you can make it. I mean, that's why drip coffee is probably, I think, the most prevalent, just because of the simplicity and the maintenance of it.
Yeah, except that a Flare Neo at the time I bought it started at $99. I've spent easily another 100 on top of that with upgrades to the machine and pressure gauge and an extra, 2 extra portafilter baskets. A portafilter is the thing that holds the coffee puck.
Sure.
But I've spent some money upgrading that to the point where I should have just bought a Flare Classic to begin with. But if you really want to spend money in Flare's ecosystem, they make the Flare Pro, and then they make the Flare 58, which by the time everything in the Flare ecosystem is based around this idea of having like their own proprietary portafilter, the brew chamber that fits on top of it, so on and so forth. By the time you get to the Flare 58, you're using legitimate 58 millimeter portafilters, like commercial stuff, and they have preheating elements and everything, so you don't have to like heat up your brew chamber with scalding hot water like I do. You literally plug the son of a bitch into the wall and press a button, and it just heats itself up. That's also like a $500 lever machine. And by the way, when we start talking about espresso, let me just tell you, if you want to start playing with espresso, I highly recommend you follow my example. Start with Flare. The barrier to entry is fairly low. If you want, there are some commercial machines that you can get into for like the sub $500 range. Talk about like Gaja or Breville or any of the bigger names. Cheaper than that, your quality falls to crap really, really fast. But understand that when you start looking at espresso machines, because it's a specialty market and because the machines themselves have to be like so precisely made, it's not unheard of to see $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 espresso machines. That's not
that's a bit
unheard
of a bar to entry.
I mean, I've seen $1,500 what they call prosumer models, which is like it makes one cup at a time, but it's a really, really nice machine that's you're gonna like will to your grandkids. And then if you start looking at any of the multi-head machines that are meant for like, because again, this is a thing within the espresso culture. There are people who it's not enough to have the $1,500 prosumer model on your shelf on your counter. They want something that came out of a coffee shop, so they will go shopping for like used $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 machines that will make 2 and 3 cups of espresso at the same time.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it can be a lot. I'm actually so my daughter has this thing where she enjoys going thrifting, and I go with her, and I'm there strictly looking for old espresso machines.
Oh, well,
Because it would be worth it to me to get one and see what I can do to put it back in service.
Well, that would be a fun project for sure. At the very least, you learn something.
Yeah, Raggle saying try estate sales.
Dead
frankly,
people's stuff is always cheaper than living people's stuff.
Especially some of that espresso stuff. Like I don't want to say it's so specialty, but like there's just not a huge market for it, honestly.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
anyway,
I can believe that.
So Nick, have I told you more than you ever wanted to know about coffee, or do you have any burning questions I haven't discussed?
I have curiosity. I definitely should probably try slightly fresher coffee than what is probably 3 months old coffee on my counter.
Bruh.
Hey, man, it's gotten me by so far. I'll probably try it. Maybe I'll get some of the whole bean coffee from Disaster here shortly and try that out. I'll have to get a grinder. Because I'm pretty sure my grinder will not make coffee.
What grinder do you have?
Grinder.
No.
It will powder the coffee. It will powder your bones. It'll powder everything. Pretty sure that bastard right there is like half horsepower. It dims the lights in the other room when I turn it on.
So my only question is like, when you talk about needing a grinder recommendation, and this is a good thing to unpack for the audience, if you're going to make that first initial step from ground coffee into whole bean, you need a grinder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is power grinder required, or are you willing to use a hand grinder? It's a fair question, because the problem is, like, if you're going to fill a 12-cup drip machine, doing that with a hand grinder, you're going to be here for a long time.
Probably an electric grinder, more than likely.
Okay, so hand grinders, first of all, any grinder you get has to be a burr grinder. Point blank and period. If you see
a blade grinder?
No, a blade grinder will give you absolutely zero consistency over the size of the ground. And the coffee will come out tasting muddy and crappy out of the back end.
All right.
There's actually James Hoffman did a YouTube channel a channel feature on this recently, and he was comparing the difference in taste between like coffee that was fresh ground, 1 day old, 2 day old, 3 day old, so on and so forth. And then he compared a really, really crappy chopper to a burr grinder to a really high-end grinder.
Okay.
And the chopped coffee that was 1 day old still didn't taste as good as the 3 day old coffee that came out of a burr grinder.
Interesting.
So, and this was like blind taste testing. He just put them all in a row and then figured out what was what afterwards. So like, Burr grinders are a necessity. On the cheaper end of things, to get your feet wet, you're probably going to be looking at conical burr grinders. If you can find one that has metal burrs instead of ceramic, it'll cost a couple of bucks more, but it'll last longer too. Most of your entry level grinders like Cuisinart or any of those common brands, think like your Target, Walmart
Yeah.
brands, that will get you by.
Okay.
I will tell you now that the things you're going to not be happy with, which are kind of built into that price bracket, is the collection bins are going to be made of plastic. There's going to be a lot of stack buildup. It's going to fling like if you grind your coffee, let it sit there for about half an hour before you take it out, or better yet, grind your coffee at night and then the next morning brew it.
Oh, okay.
But if you don't do that and let that static dissipate, then when you pull the collection bin out, the static's just going to eject coffee all over the counter
Oh,
every
that's
time.
good to know.
Yeah, it's annoying. I actually am currently playing with an Urbanic, I think a 74 series, which I had to have shipped in from South Korea because that's where they're made. That was a $250 grinder, and it actually has an aluminum collection bin.
Sure.
It doesn't make as much static. It doesn't make as much mess. It's a flat burr grinder instead of conical burr, but it's 3 times the price of the Cuisinart I started with. So it's one of those things of if you're gonna make that jump into whole bean coffee, I recommend you start at a cheaper grinder.
Yeah, and make sure the investment's worthwhile for you.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that especially if we're talking about like weekend coffee and your day to day is still going to be the red can that's already ground, then spending $300, $400, $500 on a really good grinder just doesn't make sense for once a week coffee. If you end up like me and you go down the rabbit hole and you get really stupidly into coffee, you'll be able to justify a $300, $400, $500 grinder to yourself really, really quickly.
No, I completely understand that. For your hobby, quality tools do make a difference.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of things is once you have a grinder, you are only 2 things away from being able to roast your own. You need a roasting pot of some sort, and you would optimally need an IR thermometer so you can like check your preheat temperature on the pot.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you already have a cookie sheet and a colander.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not a problem.
So with roasting, I roast my coffee. When it's done, I dump it out on the coffee sheet, kind of like, shake it back for it to spread it out. And then I put it under a fan, let the fan blow air over it. And that starts to blow the chaff, which is the outside skin of the bean that flakes off during roasting, blows that out and cools the beans down. Because if you have the beans all mounted up, then the ones in the center are being insulated and heated by the ones on the outside. They're continuing to roast.
Yeah.
So you do that. And then after that, I drop the beans into a colander and like shake them up under the fan to get more of the chaff out. And then I drop them into a bucket and bring them in the house.
Nice. Makes sense.
But if you already have the grinder, then you're only really 2 small pieces of equipment away from being able to roast your own. And if you never get to that point, you have the grinder, you can buy whole bean coffee.
There you go. Nice.
I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff. I told you I could talk about coffee for an hour. It's been an hour and a half, and I know there's more.
Hey, we all like coffee. And those of us that don't, you're wrong. And it's okay to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it is 9 p.m. over here, and I do have a bright and early day of fun and adventure to have at work. So
yeah.
I'm probably going to sign this one off.
Sounds fair, man.
Didn't talk sources.
There are many. They are between the 25th North and 30 South latitudes.
I'll tell you what, Raggle, you remind me next week, and I'll get you taken care of.
Sounds fair.
All right. Matter of fact, it's going to go out the door. I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to have coffee because that's about the only way I can mimic adult behavior. And if you also need coffee, then you should check out disastercoffee.com. The link's in the show description, along with a promo code MOF that gets you a discount on your coffee. It's good for anything in the store. And I mean, try it. If you're looking for a coffee recommendation, like you look at all the blends, you have no earthly idea what you're into, reach out to me and I'll ask you some basic questions, try to point you in the right direction. But the best I can tell you is like, if you try a medium and a dark roast and somewhere in between those two, you'll figure out what you like fairly quickly. But quite frankly, we have a lot of different roasts in Disaster Coffee Store, and I think they're all at least pretty good.
Nice.
But I'll be the first to admit, Dark Humor, even though it's our brand, is actually not my favorite. I'm a little ashamed to admit that. I like Bear Blend.
Okay.
So when we first started this relationship with Disaster Coffee, before Andrew and I became part owners, we were both really, really into dark roast. And since then, I've backed off. I like medium dark now.
Hey, fair enough, man. Tastes evolve.
Jeff, holding it down for Stuart. He didn't see Stuart, so start over.
We refuse, as is tradition.
We refuse, as is tradition.
One of these days, Stuart is going to ask us to, and we will just end the stream and replay it from the start until that point.
That's a lot of work just to needle the old jerk.
I think it would be amusing.
We'll take it under consideration. All right. Matter of Facts podcast going out the door. Good night, everybody. Have a cup of coffee in the morning. Think of us, and we'll talk to you in a week. Bye, y'all.
Good night. Good night.